All right, it's 5 o'clock, and we're now going to, I move to open the meeting for the Dartmouth Board of Health on Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. We'll open with a roll call. So Emily Michelle Olmsted is present. Michelle
sorry.
Keith, are you pregnant? Or
Yes.
present, excuse me. Thank you.
Yes.
Richard Romero is present.
Excellent, thanks so much. All right, so our first appointment is at 5:02, and so we cannot take that yet. Chris, I see you just joined. Oh, and I apologize. As a reminder to everyone on the call, this meeting is being recorded. Chris, can we move on to to section 2, new business, the minutes of February 5th, since we cannot touch the 5:02 appointment?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think I only had one question about the minutes. Let me see, sorry, let me scroll down to this next section. It says that Michelle Keith opened the regular meeting at 4 o'clock, but then it says later on, Michelle Keith came into the meeting at 4:06. I couldn't remember what happened, but I was a little confused by that wording.
I think that was from the previous meeting. The 406 one.
Okay, so do you think that needs to be taken out?
So we can,
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. So we can go back and check, just to make sure in the video.
Great. Great.
And if there is an error, in the draft minutes, we can correct it to what the video shows if the board is accepting to that.
Sure. So that would just be a condition to change that if it's true, as long as no one else has any other issues with the minutes.
That's correct.
Great. Michelle Keith, did you have any questions or comments on the minutes?
No, I just, I can't remember, and I'd have to take a look at the previous minutes, do you know what I'm saying, in those minutes, and I'm just not in a setup right now where I could go and look at that right now. So I think what Chris is saying makes sense, and I certainly agree with it. And if we need to do a vote, I vote yes.
Okay. Richard Romero, do you have any questions or comments on the minutes?
No, I do not.
Okay. So then I move to approve the minutes for Wednesday, February 5th, 2025 for the Dartmouth Board of Health, with the condition that health agents check the recording and just check that it says if Michelle Keith opened the meeting at 4 o'clock, but also came into the meeting at 4:06. Can I get a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. I second the motion. Sorry.
Thank you.
The motion.
Michelle Keith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Richard Romero, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Emily Michelle Olmsted votes yes. Okay, it's 5:03, so now we're going to go back to section 1 for the appointments. We're going to go to the continued public hearing with Heather Roy, flat 42, lot 45 at 330 Chase Road. Chris, would you like to speak on this one?
Sure, thank you. The first thing I do want to know is I do not see the applicant here. The applicant was duly notified of the hearing today. So since the last meeting, Sandy and Allie have Sandra Goslin and Allie Emerald have been out to the site as recently as yesterday. And they did report back their findings. They have noted that the applicant has a trailer and that the applicant indicated that she would transport any animal manure to a property in Westport. And they didn't have any major issues from that most recent inspection. What I would just caution the Board of Health on is that this is about a 1 acre parcel, 40,000 square feet. It is for a number of, larger domestic animals. It's, not cows, but, full-size goats, 2 equine. So, if we have a concern about potential for nuisance, public health nuisance, noise, odor, then, historically, the board has conditioned with a conditional, a provisional permit for a certain period of time. Since the summer season is upon us, sooner than it appears, I would recommend, a provisional permit to at least June 30th. That puts us into at least one full warm weather month, a number of months of manure accumulation, and to see how that manure is being managed. Also to assess how the animals are, interacting with the residential neighborhood nearby. And I would also recommend, given the smaller size, the number of animals, that manure be managed off-site as a condition of the permit, whether it's provisional or full. And that would be it.
Chris, I have one question. If there's, I imagine that there's a certain period of time where there's a manure that's allowed to be on the site until it can be transported off. Do you have a recommendation about amount of manure that can be on the property at one time until it's then removed?
Sure, thank you. That's a great point. So, I don't want to put it to a certain time frame because of the the inefficiency of it. So, if we put it to no more than 2 standard size garbage barrels at any time, that would be sufficient. 2 standard size garbage barrels are kind of, that's kind of manageable. After that, you really don't want to. And if they had 3, if they were managing like half barrels and there were 4 barrels, that's fine. The volume of 2 full standard size trash cans is what I would recommend.
Great, thank you. Michelle Keith, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at all. Thank you so much.
Richard Romero, do you have any questions or comments?
It says here that on one of the letters, 18 cubic feet of manure. Is that per day or per week, or I don't know how to measure that.
Yeah, no, it's so the, right now it's goats, and even if it was just goats and horses and you were picking up, so let me just kind of back up. When we largely say manure, it's, it's the actual fecal waste and any soiled or dirty bedding. So with whether it's goats or horses, particularly with the goats, you end up with a large volume of just hay that gets put to the ground. Liquid animal waste kind of soaks into it. So it's really easy at certain times of the year to generate 18 cubic feet of waste, but that would probably take about a month in certain periods. Wintertime, it's going to generate much faster. You're trying to dry out the animals and keep them dry in a very wet time of the year. So it's going to have a tendency to build faster. So it's a little bit, it's a situational on the 18. And sometimes you get a fussy animal and you just get an animal, they hit a bale of hay that they don't like, and they just like a fussy person, they pick through the hay and they throw most of it on the ground.
Great.
Good to know.
Richard
thank you
Romero,
so
do you have anything else?
No, that is all. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else in the meeting that we have not heard from yet? Okay, I'm ready to make a finding unless anyone wants any further discussion. Okay, so hearing none, so finding that there is a trailer and that the applicant has stated that manure will be transported off-site and that there were no major issues from the recent inspection done by the health agents and staff, I move to approve the permit for Plat 42, Lot 45 at 330 Chase Road, 2 large hoofed animals, 5 small hoofed animals, 6 chickens, hens, game birds, 2 rabbits, with the following conditions. That it's a conditional permit until June 30th, 2025 to allow the board's agents to assess the keeping of the domestic animals at 330 Chase Road in accordance with the domestic animal regulations, and that the management of manure and animal waste be off-site and that no accumulation in excess of 2 standard size trash barrels or equivalent are at any time upon the property.
I second.
Great. And Michelle Keith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Richard Romero, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Emily Michelle Olmsted votes yes. Great. Okay, so we already did section 2, which is the new business, the minutes. So we're going to move on to section 3, which is old business. So item A is the proposed well regulations for notice to the Agricultural Commission. Chris, do you want to take this?
Sure, thank you. So the Agricultural Commission has been presented with a draft copy, the final draft copy of the well regulations. At the last meeting, the board discussed inserting within those regulations the provisions to mimic the state's public water supply regulations for those polyfluoroalkyl substances, forever compounds, PFAS, but that there would be, possibly more discussion on it, that if we notified the Ag Commission without the provision in there, then the board wouldn't be able to put that in without going back to the 60-day notice as required by Mass General Law. I am going to forward a link to the board members individually about these compounds of concern. I was just doing a little bit of research today on it, and I think ubiquitous might be the best word. We're all exposed to this unknowingly, but intentionally. We may favor certain cosmetics, health and beauty aids, clothing types, food sources, and it's part of our everyday life. I don't advise the board on that, on the commonality to the exposure, to diminish any concern, but to shed light on how problematic it is when we start looking at this compound that we've so embraced as a modern society, but now there's a lot of movement within state and federal agencies to address the concerns with the long-term health impacts from exposure to these compounds. And we are seeing some industry trends to remove it from products, but there's certain products I'm not sure how we're going to ever remove it from. And just, one common thing, it's in dental floss, for example. If you like that really thin dental floss, it's probably in that. But, it's common to be found in dental floss, for example. So I will send that to you all so that, as this conversation hopefully continues with the board, that, we can make sure that it's an informed decision based on how common it is. As far as, finding any studies about exposure, I think it depends on a variety of things, and it's not going to be readily found. But, I've talked to DEP about some testing that they did in a nearby community that was eligible for the state grant, free testing, and it was best described as hit and miss, that there was no pattern when they would encounter it. It wasn't as though it was something that was easily duplicated, as you may find with, let's say, a plume of contaminants associated with a leaking underground storage tank from a gas station. Let's just be specific on. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for researching into that. Yeah, I certainly look forward to understanding more as we continue to talk about this. Either Michelle Keith or Richard Romero, do you have any questions or comments on
No, not at the moment, but thank you.
Yeah, not at this time. Thanks, Emily.
So now we'll move on to section 3, item B, which is amending the Town of Dartmouth garbage regulations. Chris, would you like to speak on this?
Sure, thank you. So this is not on at this time before the board as a hearing. In order for the board to adopt a regulation, it has to be on as a hearing. We had talked about this a few months back as a means to shore up requirements that already exist within Mass DEP regulations. So this isn't adding any cost to disposal. If you are demolishing a structure and you have suspect materials in that structure, it has to be tested in accordance with 310 CMR 715. Suspect materials are materials that are all around us. They're all around me right now. And asbestos, with the exception of spray-on fireproofing, like exists in some high-rise buildings, and the old thermal cell insulation that you would see in steam operations and older heating systems. Those are the only banned asbestos items. And those were banned, I believe, in 1974. Asbestos was commonly used up until 2024 in about 100 items, largely in non-friable. I myself have seen materials come back positive from the 80s, and I am aware of testing on properties with contamination from the 90s from a particular type of material. So there's no way that you can look at asbestos, a suspect material, and say that's asbestos, that's not. The only way you can look at it is by taking a sample to a state certified lab and looking at it with having a trained technician look at that building material under polarized light microscopy. That is the only way. So this will only provide a safety net to the 310 CMR 715 regs. Not doing it. What's the implications of not doing it? Well, I can say that the last few months, it's been pretty intense out there because we've had a lot of interaction with people getting ahead of themselves and Mass DEP getting involved. You can see a $5,000 remediation turn into a $25,000 remediation if you do it wrong. And what I mean by that is, if you've got asbestos floor tile, it gets identified in a asbestos survey in a house that you want to knock down, you have a trained person come in and remove it. That's required. If you just say the heck with it and you, on a Saturday afternoon, bring your Home Depot rental excavator over and you stuff it all into a dumpster, when that dumpster hits the receiving floor at one of the state licensed facilities, they have asbestos inspectors there. If we get complaints, we get them from the public, and we call DEP and they see that material, they will test that material in that dumpster. And if they get a positive hit, now you turn that material that could have got removed for a few $1,000s into dealing with a 30-yard container, co-mixed as all hot materials. There was a property not far from where we sit here at the town hall right now that had a 30-yard dumpster with maybe 3 or 4 cubic yards of material in it when we caught it. That turned into about a $20,000 remediation. That was totally avoidable. I know of another situation, 5,000, probably going to be 20 to 25,000. So that's the money end of it, so for those that might, in the public, that we have to address when the board considers any regulation that, people might perceive as costing something. Asbestos is harmful. It is part of the federal regulations called CERCLA. It's got known health effects on people: asbestosis, mesothelioma. The long-term exposure to it is something that we need to avoid. I'm not going to diminish the health impacts of asbestos. And I don't know of anyone that has with any skill set that would stand up against those studies that were done in the medical community and by the Environmental Protection Agency. So, you know, if someone wants to be dismissive of the health impacts on themselves, when that dumpster drives down the street, fibers are released, and they're released as they drive by schools, people trying to walk, people trying to jog. If you're in your house, these fibers will stay in the air long. These are under 10 microns. It's not like dust that will settle out of the air faster. So, you know, there's anyone that's opposed to this, you know, I say you're gambling. This is to do the survey, it's already required. And it's an insurance that you're not going to end up with an exorbitant overrun that could have been handled for a fraction of the price in place than co-mixed in a dumpster. So I'm sorry for this, for being long-winded, but you know, this is the draft regulation that if the board is so inclined after reviewing this, then it would be put onto the next agenda as a public hearing. And with that, any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much for laying that out so, you know, in depth. It's, yeah, I agree as far as, you know, being concerned about asbestos and it being, you know, certainly a public health concern. And so, if I'm understanding what you're asking, Chris, it's that our next action as a board to decide tonight is to decide if the language you gave us on the last page of our packet is if we should add that into our regulations, which would then trigger a public hearing. So is that what we have to decide on as a board?
Yeah, so we know we could further develop this, but
Okay.
if you know, I just wanted to let you know where we're at before we kind of put this into the public hearing, just
Okay.
as a way of just trying to continue more transparency with, you know, the adoption of regulations, you know, so that the board doesn't find itself at a public hearing. You know, maybe someone will show up, you know, maybe they won't, but you know, just trying to you know, just promote dialogue on this. I will correct myself on one matter. There is one thing I did add, and I have to apologize for not bringing that to your attention. There is a provision in there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that was put in there for two reasons. One, because it's really kind of following of our expected, and that's only in residential areas. So that's saying if you're picking up garbage in a residential area, you can only do it from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We already have provisions within our existing chapter 250 of the town's bylaws that would that if they were doing it outside of that, it would run afoul. I've also put that in there because I've had to do several investigations for residential trash pickup, and I've had to go out at ridiculous hours in the morning. I think one time it was around 2:30 in the morning to find a large publicly traded company picking up trash in a residential neighborhood at 2:50 a.m. one time, and I want to say it was just before 4 a.m. another time. And you know, it should have never rose to that level the second time. It was extremely disruptive on the neighbors. So hopefully that by putting this into the regs, we don't have to burden the board by saying, hey, can we do this as conditions with each and every permit? You know, one gets by, you know, and if we only can do that on the, you know, the new one, we'd have to put that on, becomes inefficient. So just looking to create an enforcement mechanism for noise if it should occur, and it would be a mechanism to enforce against the permit if they defied the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. prohibition on collection in residential areas. It would not prevent collection in commercial areas.
Got it. Wow, yeah, that sounds very early to be doing that. And so again, just to reiterate, Chris, with the wording you provided, maybe apart from that time restriction that you just noted, this really is in line with already existing requirements. It just adds more teeth for our agents like you to be able to follow up on it and ensure that it's happening. Is that correct?
Yes, and and by building this into our local regulations, I don't, enforcement agencies should never get into the into dissecting enforcement strategy, but it's always best if we have a local permit and we can build regulations because it becomes much more efficient to the taxpayer should enforcement be needed to protect the town from a permitted operation that runs afoul of public interest. And I believe both of these, as they tie to air pollution, do. Absent this, we have to strictly rely on 310 CMR 715, and I think noise under the 310.7 regs. Noise is a term in DEP regs for noise pollution. We're going to be looking at town council and going to Superior Court on that, and that becomes very costly to the town.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, okay, thanks, Chris. All right, so let's go. Michelle Keith, do you have any questions or comments on this?
No, it's Chris handled everything very comprehensively.
Thank you. Richard Romero, do you have questions or comments?
No, I have no questions. Just didn't realize how asbestos was prevalent still, but yeah, very, very well put out there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And so again, I think, Chris, if I'm understanding, our next move as a board, if it sounds like we are in agreement that we as a board are concerned about this, is that we would move to direct you as our agents to move forward with drafting this regulation. Is that correct? Or what are the next possible actions we can take?
So there would be no vote here today if if the board wants to advance this to a public hearing. We can just simply put that on the next meeting, which is in a few weeks. If the board was concerned about this and wanted to talk about it more, then that could be by vote. But you do not need to vote, and I would caution against voting to advance this. Just all we need is agreement. Because I don't want to seem like there is any bit prior to the hearing. I don't want to seem like there's a vote where it's implying that everything is great. The board needs to hear public comment if there is any, and then formulate any response to that at that meeting with the vote or any further future actions that would, come down the line after that.
Got it. It sounds like we are, concerned about this, and putting it to public comment is a good next step.
I agree, Emily, Michelle. I think that, moving forward for public comment on this would be great.
Agreed.
Great. All right, since we don't need a motion for this, we're going to move on to the next agenda item. Is it correct, Chris? There's nothing else you need from us on this now that you understand our opinion?
Correct. Thank you.
All right. Section 4 is any item not known 48 hours in advance. Chris, do you have anything for this section?
I do not have anything at this time. The only thing I'll just apprise the board on, if that's okay, I think I mentioned it to you, is that the Division of Marine Fisheries has begun testing the waters of the Slocum River for the ability or inability of that portion of the outer river to support a shellfishing season. It's going to take at least 2 years to assess it. It could get derailed at any point if we had some horrible results. But what's great is that, we've had a number of private residents that have agreed to allow the state to access their property routinely to take the water samples. Without their cooperation, this wouldn't be possible. The Slocum River is too remote, making it really inaccessible for testing without the private property shoreline. So they did conduct some testing last week, and the results of that testing came back with very low counts. which is, while it's only the first, you don't want to get your hopes up. At least it wasn't the first being very bad. So long road ahead. And I just wanted, to let you all know about it, because this is something that has not happened, testing by the Division of Marine Fisheries in that area of the Slocum, or any area of the Slocum, with the intent to reopen it in at least 25 years, maybe even longer. It's been prohibited ever since.
Well, Chris, it's nice to have some good news. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that is the entire agenda. Our next scheduled Board of Health meeting is Wednesday, March 26, 2025 at 5 p.m. It is 5:30 exactly. I move to adjourn the meeting for the Board of Health. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right. Michelle Keith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Richard Romero, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Emily Michelle Olmsted votes yes. Great.
Take care,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Everyone,
Thank
till
you.
next time.
Bye.